Chapter 37. Two Graves or a Cemetery. I said noon. I know. Then what are you doing here and where's your partner? She's writing up the report and updating Johnson on this morning's carnage. Parker approached the autopsy table. Melinda turned her head toward him. Melinda, you've kind of taken a liking to Simpson, haven't you? She seems nice. You, however, are a pain in the ass sometimes. I don't disagree, but I wanted to talk to you about something. I figured you would. I saw you talking to Lindy. I hope you were gentle with her. She's quite traumatized. She needs help, not a bludgeoning. What kind of a person do you think I am? Usually nice, but she kind of knocked you around before. I never hold a grudge. It's an emotion that's too heavy to carry. Being angry hurts the person seeking the revenge more than his victim. True. You know what Confucius says? Before embarking on a journey of revenge, dig 2 graves. Hell, Lindy must have a cemetery by now. Half of the graves were probably for you. She was pretty angry when I left. Angry? She was biting off people's heads for weeks. Even now, no one mentions your name around her for fear that they'll find themselves under a headstone. Sometimes I wish I had done it differently, but to be honest, I didn't want her to come with me. I don't think she would have gone anyway. I just think she wanted to be asked. She wanted a sign that you cared. I did care, but we weren't getting along even before I told her that I was applying for the FBI. Besides, that's not what I wanted to talk to you about. Okay.
I'm listening.
I wanted to throw something at you and find out if to see if it's possible. Rather, are you going to spit it out or am I going to have to yank it out with a pair of tongs? How long are the tongs? This is pretty deep. After you hear it, you might have me institutionalized. He looked intently at Melinda and then added, Never mind, it was nothing. Just a random thought. Now that you've got me intrigued, you just want to drop it. I don't think so. Okay. As Parker opened his mouth to tell Melinda about extracting talons from his shoulders and his breakfast with the shaman's warning rang heavily in his ear. Tell no one about our meeting. Tapi-Lo has servants. They could be anyone, people you know, people close to you. Suddenly this unburdening became a bad idea, a dangerous idea. An idea more insane than the truth. Never mind. Besides, it was just a bad dream, and I've already forgotten half of it. Parker desperately wished that it had only been a dream, but it had seemed all too real. So, tell me the dream. No, it's too crazy. What do you think they're going to do, lock you up and chuck the key into the Grand Canyon? For Christ's sake, it's only a dream. Now, he wished that he had never considered telling anyone, especially Melinda. He knew that she would never let go until he told her. Even if he walked away today, she would hound him continually until he told her. So, he would tell her the reality cloaked as a dream. It was unlikely that she would think of it as anything else. It was too crazy to be real. I know, but you've got to promise that you will never say anything to anyone about this. Okay, I swear. I promise I will tell no one. Parker took a deep breath and blurted. I dreamt that I saw a little old man turn into Detective Wright. You mean he changed into him? Yes, I mean he morphed into Wright. He was a little old man and then he was Wright. That's a hell of a dream. That's not all of it. Of course, that's not all. Well, if you're already on the crazy train, you might as well ride it to the end of the line. I talked to him for quite a while. The old man was a shaman. A shaman? Seriously? A person who has access to the spirit world. Talks to the dead and all that stuff. Really? Really? That's what he said. Go on. This I've got to hear. Parker rattled off a complete description of the dream and made the mark of Colu's and the talon part of the dream. He told her that the old man said that he, Parker, had been chosen to send evil spirits back to the grave and the demon back to hell. Only then would Spooky's brutal killing stop. So, this was part of the dream? The person we call Spooky is doing the bidding of a demon because he is essentially possessed. Basically, that's what my dream indicated. So, let me get this straight. Spooky is not really responsible for his actions because he is possessed. Only in my dream. Outside it, he is the highest order of scumbag. Anyway, I told you about the talon scar, right? I think you missed that little gem. Anyway, in my dream I had a talon hanging around my neck while the old shaman was talking to me. Next thing I know, my chest is on fire, and I'm being branded by the talon. So, that was the talon that you dug out of your shoulder, right? That was part of the dream earlier, right? Then suddenly the shaman turns into Detective Wright and the talon turns into a flash drive. So, Wright tells me that I was talking to him. So, it was not the shaman. They stared at each other for nearly half a minute until Melinda broke the connection. Okay. We are deep down the rabbit hole now. Was there anything else? Yes. I was afraid of that. Go on. So, the shaman reappears and tells me to tell no one about what happened. He said that the demon had followers. He called them servants. They could be anyone, people I know, even people close to me. So, that could even be me. Melinda stared hard at Parker. Well, maybe not, crap. Then she smiled impishly to release Parker from his discomfort. Parker smiled. Oh, never you. I've never seen any darkness in your soul, even while you're cutting up bodies. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think? Come to think of it, you have all the skills necessary to do this. Other than the fact that I'm an atheist, and with the biblical quotes there's a decidedly religious tone to these killings. And that brings up another problem with your dream. With your whole supernatural spirit story. How does a Native American myth of evil spirits fit with biblical quotes, especially quotes taken from the Vulgate Bible, a Catholic Bible? I don't remember the Cowlitz being a tribe that was mentioned in the Bible. Crazy, right? But dreams don't always make sense, do they? Melinda hesitated, took a deep breath, and with a quick shake of her head said, This case has really gotten to you, hasn't it? You have no idea. You've got to take a step back. Do that Zen thing. You can't let it get to you. This case has got everyone on edge, but you're at the head of it. So, you're feeling most of the pressure. Distribute the pain. What? Distribute the pain. Share the burden. Rely on the rest of us more. Remember that it was only a dream, not reality. Getting back to reality would actually be a relief from the world I've been living in. The dreams I've been having. Parker smiled awkwardly. Good call. So, let's deal with something that, unfortunately, isn't a dream. She walked to the bodies. Parker followed. So, what have you got? As he did with the Lambda Zone murders, the killer shaved their entire bodies, except for their heads, including their nether regions, and cleaned the bodies with a strong disinfectant, and then, so, he's either trying not to leave any evidence or it's some kind of a ceremony, like a purification ritual, Parker said. Or it's both. Well, regardless, it's like the first murder at the family clinic. He's not leaving any clues, right? Not exactly. The woman who was found in front of the family planning clinic. That was the site of the first murder and mutilation that Spooky committed. Only the vaginal area was shaved. The rest of her body had not been shaved or cleaned at all. So what are you saying? Now he's more concerned about proper preparation for his butchering. Melinda clarified. Not necessarily. I'm saying that it may not be the same person. After all, it has been 6 years between the killings. I was trying to remember the technique he used on the first woman. I don't think it was the same as the last 4, especially the stitches. They were different. Plus, he put the message in the body, not on the wall. This guy could be copying him, kind of. What Spooky, the first one, did to the body appeared in the newspaper along with the biblical verses. In addition, these last 4 were naked. The first time all the victims that were found were clothed. Plus, he knew what Spooky looked like because there were artist renderings of his face in the paper. So, someone else could duplicate the cuts on the face. And these victims didn't have the same kind of ligature marks on the ankles and none on the wrists. Their heads weren't twisted around either. So, you're saying that we might have a copycat, but not a precise copycat, a different guy who is as demented as the original but more sanitary. But still a guy who is willing to slice up his face. It could be. It would help explain the long delay between the murders. Could be that the original Spooky died or left the area. He certainly couldn't show that face anywhere. She smiled wickedly. Or, ooh, he was killed by an evil spirit. Funny. Don't forget. I'm special. I've been chosen. The shaman told me. You're special all right. Last seat on the short bus. She needled. But there's something else. I took a scraping of some soil he failed to clean off the backs of the victims. And as you would expect, there was dirt and debris that was found to have come from the parking lot. But I found something that I didn't expect. She stopped, let the suspense build, and savored the anticipation. I assume that you're going to tell me sometime today. Yes, I am. She cocked her head, smiled, and waited. Parker continued, Okay, I'll say it. You are amazing. I don't know what I'd do without you. I've never known a coroner with your level of expertise. Is that enough? Yes, that will do for now. As I was saying, what I didn't expect to find was tephra and pumicite. Parker tilted his head like a confused dog. I wouldn't expect to find tephra either, but that's because I don't know what the hell it is. You know it by its common name, volcanic ash. Pumice, on the other hand. Pumicite, not pumice. Pumicite is the powder. Pumice is the stone. Of course, we all know that. So, unless there was a volcano in the parking lot, there shouldn't be any ash and pumice. Pardon me, tephra and pumicite, right? So, I pulled my notes on the lambda zone pair and then went to the cooler to check them. They'd been cleaned too. So, I thought there was no chance that I'd find anything. I scraped the entire backside of each and I was right. There was nothing. I started to shove them back in the fridge when I decided to check a couple of other places. So, I checked between the toes, fingers, armpits, and every orifice I could think of. Nothing. Well, that's very helpful. I'm not done. I can see you're going to drag this out, but please get to the point before sundown. Just wait. She smirked. I decided to shove them back into cold storage again. So, I pushed the man in and then started pushing the woman in, and I saw a reflection in the stainless steel of the cooler. Ask me what it was. What was it? Her nostrils. Parker frowned inquisitively. So I swabbed her nostrils. With her last breaths, she had inhaled volcanic ash and pumicite. And it's the same kind as the latest two victims. Okay, I'll say it. You're brilliant. Now we know. Melinda interrupted. I'm still not done. So I went down to the evidence room and, after diligent searching, dug out the clothing that the first woman was found in. Guess what? I think I've got this one. Tephra and pumicite. Right, and it has the same properties as the other. So, they were all killed in the same place. Maybe not killed, but they were all prepared in the same place, or at least were in the same place at some time. All the victims except the ones killed at the church were handled at the same place. And there has been only one major eruption around here in more than 100 years. Mount St. Helens in 1980. But ash was blown over 100 miles. True, but that was more than 30 years ago. So, to have all 5 people end up with it on them would mean to me that they were in areas of high concentration. And that would mean near Mount St. Helens. Right? But I'm still not done. Should I order Chinese, or will this trek be done before dinner? Be patient. Anyway, as soon as I had opened the evidence bag, I noticed something else. So, I went back over my notes for all of the victims and guess what I found? That you're a bloody genius. Of course. But there was something else that was common from all 5. And that would be what? The smell of sulfur dioxide. And that would be? Like rotten eggs, but milder. Only one problem. I've never smelled rotten eggs. Okay, think back to chemistry class in high school. When one of your classmates finds out about how burning sulfur smells, he sets them on fire. The smell is a very strong, pungent, rotten odor. If you've forgotten, go home, hard-boil some eggs until all the water's gone and the eggs explode. That'll remind you. I think I'll skip that test. So, you're telling me that after 6 years in an evidence bag, you could still smell it? Yes, the bag has an airtight seal. So, what does the smell of rotten eggs have to do with Mount St. Helens? When volcanoes erupt, they give off sulfur dioxide. Thus, the rotten egg smell. In the other killings, I thought that I had detected the faint odor. So, I went back and checked my notes from the autopsies. I have smelled it on all victims except the ones at the church. The odor wasn't real strong, but it's a very distinctive odor. I just didn't make the connection with Mount St. Helens because we, or should I say my assistant at the time, didn't note any tephra or pumicite. So, you're blaming it on your assistant? Yes, I am. I got rid of him for stealing stuff. Don't you think that killing him was a little harsh? What did he take? Body parts. Very funny. So, to make sure, I've also sent tissue samples from the lungs of the 4 recent murders to the lab to confirm the presence of sulfur dioxide. Since this investigation is the #1 priority, they should have the results by the end of the day. Good. So, that means that the victims would have to have been somewhere near the volcano where the sulfur dioxide was being emitted and where they could pick up telstar and pumice. He smiled. That's tephra and pumicite. Whatever. So, the smell and the other stuff will lead us to the place. Bingo! Somewhere at the foot of Mount St. Helens on the north slope. So, we get 10,000 men and scour the area. After all this, I get sarcasm. Shame on you. You're right. I'm sorry. You did a great job. So, how do we find out where they were taken? There can't be that many places where we'll find all 3, tephra, pumice, and the smell of sulfur dioxide. We need to talk to someone who has been studying the volcano. A volcanologist? Very good. You have read a book. Not really, I just watch the National Geographic Channel a lot. There's only one slight problem with this. Like what? Like, doesn't finding the sulfur dioxide, pumicite, and tephra on the first spooky murder nullify your theory that this is a copycat killer? Okay, yes, but, well, you sure know how to shoot down a perfectly rational theory. Rational maybe, but obviously not perfect. Maybe Spooky had a son. Now you're going down the rabbit hole. Chapter 38. The Devil's Lair. Finding the name of a volcanologist who knew almost every aspect of the Mount St. Helens eruption was not difficult. A call to the Johnston Ridge Observatory, which is dedicated to the history of the volcano, immediately produced a name, Professor Edwin Mabley, who was on an extended sabbatical to study the famous mountain. Getting to the observatory, however, meant using the only road that had been cleared after a heavy snow, Spirit Lake Memorial Highway. Parker told Agent Simpson that it would be ridiculous for both of them to make the long trip to the Johnston Ridge Observatory at Mount St. Helens. She agreed that her time would be better spent talking to the investigators and updating her reports. It was just before the Wednesday 6 p.m. closing when Parker walked through heavy cedar double doors to the Johnston Ridge Observatory. A middle-aged woman, Edith, was working on a display of new photographs. She stepped down from the stepladder and greeted him. She offered Parker a tour of the observatory, which he declined, and then some hot tea and English biscuits, which he also declined. However, he did give in to the coffee, mainly because he felt it would be rude to decline 3 times from such a pleasant woman who seemed anxious to talk to anyone. After finishing half of the cup, he asked about Mabley. He was told that Mabley should be heading down the mountain soon, and Parker was welcome to wait for him. In fear that Edith might continue drowning his ear with her squeaky little voice, Parker insisted that he needed to see Mabley immediately. So, he was going to trek up the mountain and catch him on the way down. Edith discouraged Parker but gave him directions to the path that led to Mabley's research outpost. After hiking for an hour, Parker ran into Mabley coming down the mountain. As he accompanied Mabley down the slope, Parker asked what his job was at the mountain. For the next half hour, the professor gushed about the love of his life, Mount St. Helens. Finally, Parker found a small window in which to sneak his reason for contacting him. As soon as Parker gave him a quick overview of Spooky's murders, Mabley was hooked. Parker and Mabley discussed the coroner's findings. The presence of tephra and pumicite intrigued Mabley, but Mabley had some bad news. The areas where those minerals could be found were vast. There was pumice on the north slope of the volcano, but it was a huge area called the pumice plain. Locating the place where the tephra was found would be an even greater problem because tephra was a general name referring to volcanic ash, and it could be composed of different kinds of minerals. He said that he would need a large sample of the tephra before he could even begin to find a matching area, and that would take a long time because he would have to begin taking thousands of samples and then analyzing them. Even then, it would be a general area since the tephra could be blown over a wide range. Parker's optimism began to drift away, until, on a whim, Mabley spoke of his favorite Cowlitz myth, the Devil's Lair. The myth was just one of many that had developed to explain the mercurial capriciousness of Mount St. Helens. Mabley began, as the myth goes, hundreds of years ago, Laulatla, the Cowlitz name for Mount St. Helens, had been angered and saddened by the people's lack of recognition and respect for the peace that the mountain had provided. Laulatla had, at a great price to itself, imprisoned the violent, winged fire devil, Tapi Lo, and his servant, the evil spirit Parse. Where did you hear this story? When I started studying the mountain, I came across a book in the archives at the University of Washington about the earlier eruptions, and there was a section devoted to tribal tales related to the mountain. So, I started to ask around, and that led me to an old woman from the Cowlitz tribe. She looked to be 90 years or older. She told me the story and asked me to write it down and put it in the observatory. I thought it would be a great addition to the history of the mountain. I've written it but haven't gotten around to displaying it yet. Mabley continued the story. Tapi Lo was a giant, fiery bird of prey that made the rivers and chambers of molten lava in the bowels of the earth his domain. But he wanted more. The piercing cry of a hawk overhead ran a chill up Parker's spine. Mabley looked up through the trees. Beautiful birds, aren't they? Unmistakable sound. To be able to ride the currents. Just amazing. Never thought much about it, but you're right. That's a distinctive shriek. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, Tapi Lo wanted dominion of the surface too. He had a problem. The molten lava was his life source. It flowed through him as it built the bones of his fiery skeleton. If he ever separated from the lava, his molten bones would cool and harden, and he would be frozen in time forever. It was uncanny. The story so far was a duplicate of the one that the old man had told him. Now, the same story from two different sources. This is getting interesting and a little eerie. Parker focused even more intently, wanting Mabley to continue. But as all evil does, Tapi Lo developed a plan. Over many decades, the magma chamber grew under the mountain until it was close enough for Tapi Lo to dig a tunnel to the base of the mountain. Over those many decades, Tapi Lo left the magma chamber for short periods of time, hollowed out a cavern, created a pool for the lava, and returned before he cooled and solidified. However, he still had another problem. The pressure from the mountain, Laulatla, kept the lava from rising into the pool. Each time he tried to bring the lava into the cavern, Laulatla would push him down and the pool would remain empty. A breeze pushed the smell of sulfur across Parker, causing his expression to register the rancid smell. Mabley seemed not to notice. It was during one of Tapi Lo's attempts to rise that he found his first and most powerful disciple, Parse. Parse was the most evil and heartless of warriors. He was a strong and brutal warrior whose love of torture and mutilation had become uncontrollable. While the warriors of a rival tribe had gone to do battle with Parse's tribe over hunting grounds, Paase rampaged through the rival tribe's village and killed every old person, woman, and child. He mutilated the bodies of his victims, including the infants. When Paase could not be found after the battle, the warriors feared the worst. These were details that the old man had not told Parker, details that made Paase more than a servant. Parker now saw himself as Tapilo's executioner. As Mabley continued to tell the story, Parker wondered how much of Mabley's details were accurate. Have you embellished the story, or is this exactly the way the old woman told it? Oh, this is almost exactly the story she told me. I don't believe I've added anything to it. Of course, she may have, and over the years others may have, but I asked her the same question since I was going to display the story. She said that it was accurate. Anyway, time passed, and when Paase didn't return, the warriors searched for him and found him in the village standing on a pile of bodies, giving a war cry. The warriors were outraged. They told him that he would face a trial for his crimes. Paase attacked the warriors, killing several of them. When he saw that he would not be able to defeat the rest, he ran. For several days, the warriors pursued Paase and thought they had him cornered at the foot of Laulatla. On one of Tapilo's attempts to bring the lava into the cavern, he sensed the presence of an enormous evil power. Suddenly, his strength increased. He rose to the bottom of the pool. As he felt the evil even more, he grew even stronger. He could feel that the evil was just outside the cavern, close to the mountain. With the added power, he opened a tunnel to the source of the evil. So, Tapilo got his strength from the evil in Paase. That's what the myth says. Paase was cornered and was preparing to fight for his life when behind him, the mountain opened. Fearing for his life, he dashed into the tunnel. The opening closed behind him. Paase continued down the tunnel and came face to face with Tapilo. He expected to die. Instead, Tapilo made a compact with him. Tapilo would give him everlasting life if Paase would bring evil, hateful people to him and cause them to commit the evilest of acts in front of him. Tapilo had determined that it was the close proximity of the evil people that had given him power, and the more powerful he was, the greater the chance that he could weaken Laulatla, blow off the top of the mountain, and move into the lava pool in the cavern. Once there, Tapilo would make Paase an extension of his power. Paase would continue bringing the evil people to Tapilo to maintain and grow his power. Parker was struck dumb with worry. This myth fit too well with his experience. If all of it were true, his life was shortly about to take a turn into the bizarre, or worse. If the myth played out the way it had in the past, he was going to be burned alive, heroically but horribly. Seeing Parker's distress, Mabley asked, "Are you okay? You're not looking too well." Unaware, Mabley had just laid out Parker's journey to death. It struck Parker deep and hard. If the myth held true, he might not have long to live. Hoping that neither death nor the myth was a foregone conclusion, Parker shook the dread aside. He was not about to jump into molten lava. After all, his shaman had said nothing about a cavern or power derived from a molten pool of lava. Mabley took the shake of Parker's head as a sign of disbelief. Anyway, the myth of the cavern still remains, and older members of the tribe have said that a few of their great-grandparents claimed that they had found the cavern. But for fear that someone would release Tapilo, Kolus had appeared in their dreams and had sworn them to secrecy. Of course, it's just a myth, and there is no credible evidence that the cavern even exists, but I've always found it fascinating that a complex myth had been woven to explain the eruptions. As Parker acknowledged the tale with a nod of his head, his cell phone rang. It was Melinda. "Hello. Hello. Can you hear me? You're not going to get good reception up here. It's in and out and spotty. You'll have to call her from the observatory," informed Mabley. Chapter 39. Fumarole on the North Slope. Mabley opened the back door to the observatory and held it for Parker, who nodded his appreciation. Edith was back up on the step stool. She had straightened the pictures and was tidying up the captions to the pictures. When Parker no longer heard the clump of Maberly's boots behind him, he turned to see where he had gone. Maberly was frozen to the door handle, staring at Edith's backside while a smile crept across his face. Maberly's eyes shifted to Parker. The professor's unfamiliarity with social graces was so profound that he was not the least bit embarrassed at Parker catching him ogling Edith's rear. "Have you met Edith yet?" Maberly asked. "Not the part that you're interested in." "What?" Maberly said with a quizzical expression. "Yes, we had coffee together." Maberly's eyes flashed back to Edith. "Isn't she wonderful?" Maberly said, nearly swooning. "She's very nice." "She is, isn't she? So, you two have something going?" "Yes." The quickness of his own wishful lie startled Maberly himself and extinguished his puppy dog stare. "I mean, no, at least not yet, but I hope." His voice tailed off, his face flushed, and his eyes drifted downward in what appeared to be sad regret. He was a pitiable sight, and Parker briefly wished he could make the man's dreams come true. But he couldn't even imagine the two together. They just didn't seem to fit, one tall, thin, tongue-tied man and a short, effervescent pixie. But stranger alliances had been made. His own with Lindy was hard to comprehend, especially now. Parker gave Maberly a few more seconds to ogle Edith as she stepped down and picked up an errant piece of fuzz. If it wasn't love, it was a reasonable facsimile, or at the very least, lust, of which even the most socially inept possessed in abundance. When Parker tapped Maberly on the shoulder to regain his attention, Maberly smiled woefully and walked into his office to their immediate right. "The landline is in my office," Maberly informed. Maberly walked into his office, and Parker followed. Maberly sat at his desk and pushed the speakerphone to Parker, who was standing next to the desk. He dialed Melinda's number. She answered. Parker listened for a few seconds and then replied, "Sulfur dioxide in the tissue samples." "That's nice, Melinda, but that's not going to help. The area where pumice and tephra can be found is enormous. So a gas, which can disperse over a wide area, puts us no closer. All we've managed to do is to narrow the area down to the north slope of the mountain." Parker felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned. "I don't mean to interrupt you, but that does help a lot," Maberly said. "Hang on, Melinda." He pulled the handset away from his ear and turned to face Maberly. "How so?" Maberly's eyes lit up. "If the level of sulfur dioxide was high enough to be absorbed into the tissue of the lungs and remain there in high concentrations, then the area will be narrowed down considerably." "Really? Why?" "Because—" "Wait a second." Parker put the phone on speaker. "Melinda, I'm with Edwin Maberly, he's the volcanologist, and he says that the sulfur dioxide they found in the tissue samples may help a lot." "Go ahead, Mr. Maberly. Call me Vulcan. Everyone else does. What we're looking for is called a fumarole, and there are quite a few but not a huge number of them." "And what's a fumarole?" Parker asked. "It's a vent like a crack or a fissure or opening where gas escapes. The one you're looking for gives off a sulfur vapor. The sulfur vapor will often crystallize around the opening and form a yellow crust. So, we're looking for a fumarole in or close to the pumice plane." Parker took the phone off speaker and put it back up to his ear. "Did you get that, Melinda?" "Great, see you in a while. Bye." Parker put the handset back on the cradle. "You're smiling," Maberly said. "This investigation might finally be going somewhere." Maberly said that he would mark the possible search areas on a map and have it ready for him in 2 days, 3 at the latest. As Parker let the cedar doors close behind him, he could see Maberly leaning against his office doorway, gazing fondly at Edith. "Be careful, Maberly. Sometimes love doesn't end up the way you thought it would."